One of the things that I wanted you to do was to consider persuasive writing as we looked at rhetorical analysis. One of the texts that I want you to consider is Senator Barack Obama's speech to the 2008 Democratic National Convention. It is a speech that was given in response to criticisms that were levied against Obama in light of remarks made by Obama's minister, Jeremiah Wright. The speech, now considered to be a landmark because of its frank discussion of race relations in America, addresses Obama's personal history, Wright's divisive remarks, and the challenges that the country faces. Challenges that Obama argues can be met effectively only if all Americans realize that the dreams of one group do not come at the expense of another's dreams, and that only by working together can the country move forward. The page number that I have provided is the page number that the quotations come from. The citation that follows is the citation for the text, which is now formatted using a hanging indent. Notice that below it is a citation for the speech as it occurred in 2008, and that's the format for the speech itself. You, in effect, have the transcript of the speech. On Blackboard, you have access to the speech itself and this other information that I have provided, that I have listed here, but I wanted to talk to you about that. First of all, when we are looking at a rhetorical analysis, the first thing we do is to read or listen to the text itself. The speech is fairly long, but I think it's worth listening to because of the impact it had on our country at the point in time that it was given. It does respond to, it is given in response to Reverend Wright's speeches, and I had a difficult time finding videos or transcripts of his speech, but I did find one that I have provided. In the speech, Obama mentions the Jim Crow laws. He says the brutality of slavery and the time when Jim Crow laws were in effect. And typically that is simply referred to as Jim Crow. But those laws were laws that were designed to segregate and to separate the races. There are two sites here that you can go to if you choose to learn about Jim Crow and those laws. And then finally, even though Wikipedia is not a reliable source, I did think that it was valuable for one purpose, and that is for you to see responses to the speech. Wikipedia is not a legitimate source. It may not be used for academic research, but it is sometimes a place to begin. And if you find information there that you think is valuable, then you need to follow the trail back to the original source and use that instead of Wikipedia. But I'm going to use a little bit of privilege here, and we're going to go to Wikipedia. There are a lot of responses given to the speech, responses by politicians, talks about effects on voters, but I wanted you to look at what academics said. And again, the idea is that if you felt this was appropriate, then you could go back to the original source. You notice that they do list sources here. Let's look at the bottom. So they do have a list of sources, and if you think something is valuable in a Wikipedia site, then what you need to do is go back to the original source and cite it. But they've collected these things here for us, and we're going to look at them briefly. So what did academics say? Thomas Mann argued that Obama gave an extraordinary speech because it was frank, honest, measured in tone, inclusive, and hopeful. He appeared wise beyond his years and genuinely presidential. But Mann felt it was unclear whether it would be sufficient to stem a racial backlash against his candidacy. Historian Gary Willis compared it to Lincoln's Cooper Union speech of 1860. He noted similarities in the context. The men, both lawyers, both from Illinois, were seeking the presidency despite what seemed their crippling connection with extremists. Each decided to address alleged connections with radicals openly in a prominent national venue well before their party's nominating conventions. Wills argued that Jeremiah Wright was Obama's John Brown, the radical abolitionist from whom Lincoln made a point of disassociating himself. For Wills, what is of lasting interest is their similar strategy for meeting the charge of extremism. They looked at larger patterns under the surface of the bitterness of their day, and each forged a moral position that rose above occasions for their speaking. Wills was complimentary of Obama's speech. He noted that its prose of necessity lagged far beyond the resplendent Lincoln. So Wills, comparing Obama's speech to that of Lincoln's, sees a similarity in some ways, but then he says that Lincoln's was much better. These are examples of academics, political science, and other academics who are offering evaluations of the speech. One of the things that you look at when you look at when you look at writing a rhetorical analysis is including both the context, when and why the text was written or spoken, and the response that it received from those around it. And then the last thing that's available to you is access to rhetorical analysis of the speech. One that is from foreign languages, Let Us Learn Together, Literature in Foreign Languages. The second that is from the Quarterly Journal of Speech. You remember we talk about popular versus scholarly text. You see here that this was published on the web. This was published in a journal, an academic journal of speech. And then finally, we have a third rhetorical analysis that is written by a student. Notice that I arranged them in alphabetical order. The links are not necessary for the bibliographical citation, but notice that the citations are hanging indent. Notice the format. Hacker Text provides you examples. So what I want you to do with this text is to listen to the speech and to think in terms of how effective you think the speaker is. What appeals are made? Appeals to reason and logic and common sense, appeals to credibility, and appeals to emotion. See if you can identify those as you listen to them and see what your reaction is to his appeal for a more perfect union.